Types, or line and circle qualities. Each of the previous components, states, stages, etc., have a masculine and feminine type, or can also be referred to as a line or circle quality. There are two basic concepts here. One has to do with the idea of types themselves, and the other with masculine and feminine, or lines and circles, as one example of types. Types can also refer to items that can be present at virtually any stage of development or state of consciousness. One common typology, for example, that you might be familiar with is the Myers-Briggs, whose main types include inventory of the way we uniquely feel, think, sense, and/or intuit. We can be any of those types at virtually any stage of development. Types could also include our soul print through various divination systems like astrology, the Mayan Nawals, numerology, or the Enneagram. These kinds of horizontal typologies can be very useful, especially when combined with levels, lines, and states of consciousness. To give an example, we're going to stick with just masculine and feminine right now, and later go into a deep dive about masculine and feminine and line and circle qualities. Carol Gillian, in her enormously influential book, In a Different Voice, pointed out in her research that men and women tend to develop through 3 or 4 major levels or stages of moral intelligence. Again, moral intelligence being an example of a line. Pointing to a great deal of research evidence, Gillian noted that these 3 or 4 moral stages can be called pre-conventional, conventional, post-conventional, and integrated. These are actually quite similar to the 3 simple developmental stages that have been communicated so far, this time applied to the line of moral intelligence. Gillian found that stage 1 is a morality centered entirely on oneself. Hence, this pre-conventional stage or level is called egocentric. Stage 2 moral development is centered on us, so that my identity has expanded from just me to include other beings of my group. Hence this conventional stage, or often called ethnocentric, traditional, or conformist or mythic conformist. With stage 3 moral development, our identity expands once again, this time from us to all of us, or all human beings, or even all sentient beings, and hence this stage is often called world-centric. At the world-centric stage, we no longer have just care and compassion for ourselves, egocentric, and not just for our family, our tribe, our nation, ethnocentric, yet for all of humanity, for all men and women everywhere, regardless of color, sex, or creed, world-centric. And when we develop even further at stage moral development, Gillian calls this integrated. Carol Gillian's major contribution, she strongly agreed that women, like men, develop through those 3 or 4 major hierarchical nested spheres of inclusion, of care and concern, or growth. Gillian herself correctly refers to these stages as hierarchical because each stage does have a higher capacity for care, concern, and compassion. She said that women progress through those stages using a different type of logic. They develop, in her words, quote, in a different voice, end quote. Male logic, or a man's voice, tends to be based on terms of autonomy, justice, and rights, whereas women's logic or voice tends to be based on terms of relationship, care, and responsibility, or the ability to respond. Men tend towards agency, women tend towards communion. Men follow rules, women follow connections. Men look, women touch. Men towards individualism, women towards relationship. One of Carol Gillian's favorite stories, a little boy and girl are playing. The boy says, "Let's play pirates." The girl says, "Let's play like we live next door to each other." And the boy says, "No, I want to play pirates." "Okay," the girl says, "you can play the pirate who lives next door." Little boys don't like girls around when they are playing games like baseball because the two voices clash, and often with comedy. Some boys are playing baseball, a kid takes his third strike and is out, so he starts to cry. The other boys stand unmoved until the kid stops crying. After all, a rule is a rule, and the rule is 3 strikes and you're out. Gillian points out that if a girl is around, she will usually say, "Aw, come on, give him another try." The girl sees him crying and wants to help, wants to connect, wants to heal. However, the boy might feel annoyed by this because they are doing the game as an initiation into the world of rules and male logic. Gillian says that the boys will therefore hurt feelings in order to save the rules, as to where girls will break the rules in order to save the feelings. In a different voice, both the girls and the boys will develop through the 3 or 4 developmental stages of moral growth, egocentric to ethnocentric to world-centric, and perhaps integrated. Yet they will do so in a different voice, using a different logic. Carroll specifically calls these hierarchical stages in women selfish, which is egocentric, care, which is ethnocentric, universal care, which is world-centric, and integrated. Again, why did Carroll, who has, by the way, been badly misunderstood on this topic, say that these stages were hierarchical? Because each stage has indeed a higher capacity for care and concern and compassion. Not all hierarchies are bad, and this is a very excellent example of why. So integrated, or stage 4, what is that? At the 4th and the highest stage of moral development that we are currently aware of, the masculine and feminine voices in each of us tend to become integrated, according to Gillian and others. This does not mean that the person at this stage starts to lose the distinctions between masculine and feminine, and hence become some kind of bland, androgynous, homogenized being. In fact, masculine and feminine dimensions might become more intensified. At the integral stage, what it means is that we start to integrate or befriend or see how each masculine and feminine or line and circle qualities actually function, and using those functions at the right place, at the right time, with the correct people. It does mean that the individual starts to befriend both the masculine and feminine modes in themselves, even if they characteristically act predominantly from one or the other. Have you ever seen the caduceus, the symbol of the medical profession? It's a staff with 2 serpents crisscrossing and wings at the top of the staff. The staff represents the central spinal column. Where the serpents cross the staff represents the individual chakras, moving up the spine from the lowest to the highest. And the 2 serpents themselves represent solar and lunar, or masculine and feminine, or line and circle qualities or energies at each of the chakras. That's a crucial point. The 7 chakras or 9 chakras, or however many human beings have now that will further evolve as we evolve, are simply a more complex and nuanced version of the 3 simple levels or stages, represents the 7, 9, etc. levels of consciousness and energy available to all human beings. In the traditional 7 chakra system, the first 3 chakras, food, sex, and power, are roughly stage 1. Chakras at 4 and 5 relate to relational heart and communication, are basically stage 2, and chakras 6 and 7, psychic and spiritual, are the epitome of stage 3. The important point here is that, according to the traditions, each of those 7 levels has a masculine and feminine aspect, type, characteristic, or voice. Neither masculine nor feminine is higher or better. They are just 2 equivalent types at each of the levels of consciousness or development. This means, for example, that with chakra 3, the egocentric power chakra, there is a masculine and feminine version of the same chakra. At the solar plexus chakra level, males tend towards power exercised autonomously. They say things like, my way or the highway, and women tend toward power exercised communally or socially. They say things like, do it this way or I won't talk to you. And so on with the other major chakras, each of them having a solar and lunar, or masculine and feminine, or line and circle, quality or dimension. Neither is more fundamental, neither can be ignored. At the 7th chakra, however, we notice that the masculine and feminine serpents both disappear into their ground or source. Masculine and feminine meet and unite at the crown. They literally become one. And that is what Carol Gillian found with her stage 4 moral development. These two voices in each person actually become integrated so that there is a paradoxical union of autonomy and relationship, rights and responsibilities, agency and communion, wisdom and compassion, justice and mercy, masculine and feminine. The important point is that whenever we use an integral operating system or an integral developmental map, we are automatically checking any situation in ourselves, in others, in an organization, in a culture, and seeing that we're including both masculine and feminine types or lines and circle qualities so as to be as comprehensive and inclusive as possible. If we believe that there are no major differences between masculine and feminine, or if we are suspicious of such difference, then that's fine too. We can treat them the same if we would like. This is simply to communicate that either way, we can have the ability to touch bases with both the masculine and the feminine, however we view them. Yet this masculine and feminine typology or type is just one of many other numerous horizontal typologies that can be very helpful when part of a comprehensive integral operating system. With the integral approach, we can draw on any or all typologies known and have yet to be known as appropriate. Types are just as important as quadrants, levels, or stages of development, lines of intelligences, and states of consciousness. There's an interesting thing about types. We can have a healthy and unhealthy version of them. To say that somebody is caught in an unhealthy type is not a way to judge them, yet to comprehend and communicate more clearly and effectively with them. For example, if each stage of development has a masculine and feminine domain, each of those can be healthy or unhealthy, which can be functional or dysfunctional. This is simply another kind of horizontal typing, yet one that can be extremely useful when navigating ourselves, relationships with others, and in the world. For example, a functional masculine principle tends towards autonomy, strength, independence, and freedom. Yet when that principle becomes dysfunctional or pathological, all of those positive strengths and virtues either over or under operate. And when it's dysfunctional, autonomy shows up as alienation, strength shows up as domination, independence could show up as a morbid fear of relationship and commitment, and freedom can show up as a drive to destroy. For example, a dysfunctional masculine principle tries to dominate in fear rather than transcending in freedom. The functional feminine principle tends towards flowering, relationship, care, and compassion, as to where the dysfunctional feminine flounders in each of those. Instead of being in relationship, she might become lost in relationship or enmeshed. Instead of having a functional self in communion with others, she might lose herself altogether and is dominated by the relationships that she's in. The dysfunctional expressions of the feminine might include fusion rather than connection, in a panic state rather than in a flow state, or being in a meltdown rather than having clear communication. The dysfunctional feminine principle does not find fullness in connection. Rather, it would be expressed as chaos in fusion. So, having an integral perspective helps us find ways to identify both the functional and dysfunctional masculine and feminine types or dimensions, operating in ourselves and others. The important point about this section is simple. Various typologies have their usefulness in helping us to comprehend and communicate with others. And with any typology, there are healthy and unhealthy versions of a type. Pointing to a dysfunctional type is not a way to judge people, yet a way to comprehend and communicate with them more clearly and effectively.